The national debt, the budget deficit, and the money supply are all soaring. Massive evictions, bankruptcies, foreclosures, and homelessness surging. Countless businesses shuttered. Sweeping unemployment is reshaping the lives of millions of Americans, all while continuing to deal with the ongoing pandemic. The economy is being held together by stock buybacks and QE. The U.S. economy is on fire just like the West Coast, all while a pandemic and injustice is still raging. The systems have been broke for a long time, and now it's taking its last breaths. The fall of America designed from within has begun. The economy is finished and living on borrowed time. Over $27 trillion in created counterfeit funny money with no end in sight. Over $100 trillion in unfunded liabilities. We have been throwing money around as it grows on trees. Trillions are flying by so fast, it's hard to even count them. The numbers are there. The United States hasn't seen debt like this since World War II. The national budget deficit will hit a record of $3.3 trillion this year, which is more than triple that of 2019. And next year, the nation's debt will likely be bigger than the size of the entire economy. We are heading for an economic collapse, hyperinflation, and a Venezuelan environment that will probably evolve into martial law and food riots. And the stock market is not the economy. The economy is already in shambles. I'm not sure what more damage a minus 31.7% GDP economy can have. Americans should not be footing the debt bill of fake Wall Street's numbers by the Fed dumping debt money into it. I don't know if many Americans know this, but the Fed is artificially funding the stock market by dumping government money into it, our money, with zero benefits for us. Having 0% interest rates when we had unemployment under 5% had something to do with the markets. Dropping $7 trillion in invented cash on the markets in the last 3 years has something to do with the markets. Giving away $50 billion to large agribusiness over 3 years has something to do with it. The Fed mortgaged the future to have the perception of a good economy. The debt and deficit have never even been close to this bad, and that's before the pandemic. If a person could count one number every second, how long would it take the person to count to 1 trillion? Answer: 31,688 years. In August, for the 5th month in a row, money supply growth soared to an all-time high, in the wake of unprecedented quantitative easing, central bank asset purchases, and various stimulus packages. The overall M2 total money supply in August was $18.3 trillion, and the TMS total was $18.5 trillion. Since January, this is an increase of $2.9 trillion in M2 and $4.3 trillion in the TMS. Year-over-year growth in the money supply, as measured by TMS, came in at 37.56%. That was up 36.92% from July's record rate. In comparison, the August 2019 increase in the money supply was a paltry 1.86%. As measured by M2, the money supply grew by 23.23% in August, nearly the same rate as of July's record of 23.29%. The growth rate has never been higher, with the 1970s being the only period that comes close. Infinite money creation is an absolute consequence of our Keynesian economics. At some point, the money supply creation goes vertical by demand of this failed economic system. Total Fed assets surged to nearly $7.2 trillion in June. These new asset purchases have set a new all-time high and are propelling the Fed balance sheet far beyond anything seen during the Great Recession stimulus packages. The Fed's assets are now up more than 600% from the period immediately preceding the 2008 financial crisis. And that is just the money supply creation that they let you see. There is a hell of a lot more being created that you cannot see. We are now approaching $100 trillion that the US government has created that off the books, spent without the knowledge of the American people, and is being used to destroy America, and that is coming. This is the end game. Either the system must be allowed to collapse, or we move to zero growth, total socialism. That's the horrifying long-term cost of all these bailouts. Had we let things wash out in 2009, we'd be on the road toward long-term recovery by now, but we just couldn't bear the immense short-term pain. The next 4 years will be about survival. Economic growth will be a challenge. There won't be slush funds for more freebies. Welcome back to the Atlantis Report. You are here for your daily dose of the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Please take a second to click the like button. And as you know friends, I rely on your donations to keep this channel functional. As you know, it takes a crazy amount of research and time to bring you this content on a daily basis, so I hope you consider helping with whatever donation you can afford. Thank you. 2008 the banking system collapsed, and we all knew why and who the culprits were. Their solution was, keep on printing your way out of it until you can't anymore, then start the Great Reset and blame it on the pandemic. Our biggest crime would be to let them get away with it. It's been bad since President Nixon took us off the gold standard. The national debt to GDP is the highest it has been since World War II. The current administration is no better than the last one in terms of debt financing. Congress has spent way too much money that they did not have over the last 4 or 5 decades. They were profligate with our tax dollars. Now that the piper must be paid, suddenly we have a nice pandemic to blame for this mess. People will be starving in the streets right after the election. In fact, Uncle Sam added $3.3 trillion to the national debt since March. That is on top of the $1.4 trillion in debt piled on in the 12 months through February 2020. The 2020 budget deficit surged past $3 trillion in August, even as the US government continues to borrow and spend at a torrid pace. As of 2019, there were about 128 million households in the US. So $3.3 trillion is about $25,780 per household. Your family, that is, you and your kids, just racked up $25,000 in debt. Did you feel like you got your money's worth? I'm trying to figure out what I have to show for blowing $25,000 since March. Shouldn't we have some new parks, or some light rail systems, or a few square miles of solar farms? Next time we spend $3 trillion in a quarter, I want to see some tangible social good build the common sort of thing happen. I want our money spent on something that does the country well. Stop pumping our money into what is supposed to be a free market engine of commerce and trading. The debt is going to be on us. Give us the borrowed money. We will rebuild the economy by spending into it, not by propping up capitalists who couldn't adapt to the changing environment. No more special interests, donor class, big corp bailouts. If we are borrowing $1 trillion, give each American $250,000 of it. The danger is if the federal government does too much. It is already running a $3 trillion yearly deficit and has a $27 trillion debt, equal to 137% of GDP, plus unfunded liabilities of $154 trillion. The federal government is financially strapped and needs to do fewer things better. We should begin a new period of federal government fiscal consolidation and restraint, for the long-term benefit of all citizens, and not embrace the vast new spending profligacy being contemplated regarding the pandemic and many other areas these days. There are many predictable dangers of this massive Fed intervention. It needs to end. We risk a massive devaluation of the dollar, and we simply can't keep bailing out companies and the stock market. Artificially low interest rates were a big part of the housing collapse 12 years ago. The Fed learned squat, and now we have another housing bubble coupled with a massive stock market bubble. We have to take our medicine and develop greater fiscal responsibility. You can only cut rates from 18% to 1% over a 40-year period once. Artificially low rates create fake wealth for a time but ultimately destroy economies. In the meantime, the ultra-wealthy cash in, while the average American suffers. The system was designed to end in total bankruptcy and poverty for the American people. Pity politicians never told you. The Federal Reserve was established to loot the nation with the printing press. They print IOUs that indebt you, the people. They call them dollars to make them look like money. They give you these IOUs for your labor and your assets. They pay you with your own debt. This means they do not pay you at all on an aggregate level. This system ends when they can see the bottom of the barrel. Is it unique to the US? No, it is now everywhere. We will have a global collapse, and it pays to prepare. After all, what will you use to buy food when the dollar is worth close to zero? Extend and pretend. What choice did they have? How could they not give a spoiled population more and more and ever expect to get re-elected? Ask people to sacrifice while there are more millionaires and billionaires every week. The oligarchs have their plans in place to take their gold and flee when it gets ugly. Those certain wealthy people, insert familiar names, are promoting their sick Bolshevik agenda and will flee too when the pitchforks come out. Think Germany in the 1930s. The Great Reset will happen, and likely by the end of the year. The next stimulus package will get approved and will kick the can for a couple more months. There is no solution that doesn't involve great pain. Massive layoffs of overpaid government workers are necessary and will cause a cascading effect. More foreclosures, more Lexuses, boats, the repoed, etc. Congress had no reason to control their deficit spending with the Fed coming to their rescue. Very bad policy enabling the irresponsible children in Congress to spend recklessly. $27 trillion can never be paid back, and much more to come. If you think people in the big decaying cities are angry now, just wait. With pro sports on life support, a good thing, what happens to all those overpaid athletes who only took a few, required, college classes so they could play football? They get cut from the team, and what future do they have? None. No education. Go home and complain how unfair it all is. The repo man comes for the new BMW, and the ex-girlfriend is demanding child support. What the hell? Join the protests, read riots. Prepare now, this is going to get real ugly. Very few thought the first civil war would occur. Own good stuff with no debt and be prepared for some hard times with extra food, protection, and some entertainment. Be as healthy as you can be too. Everything else is just a distraction. Like a frog in slowly boiling water plus smoke and mirror games to deflect the critics away from the truth, it is already happening now. Mainstream media is complicit. Nothing here, just move on. This was the Atlantis Report. Please like, share, leave me a comment, subscribe. And please take some time to subscribe to my backup channels, I do upload videos there too. You'll find the links in the description box. You will also find a PayPal link if you want to make a donation. Thank you wholeheartedly to all those of you who have already donated. Stay safe and healthy, friends.